Would you like to make beautiful roving on the new Ashford e-carder? In today's video, I will be showing you exactly how I use the Ashford e-carder. I love my Ashford products, but when I first purchased this machine, to be frank, I thought that the instructions were lacking. It recommends carding slowly and at about 60 to 80% of the speed. But with two dials on the machine, there are quite a few variations in which you could set those dials. Should the liquor in drum be slower than the swift drum, or should they be set equally? And what about the different types of fleeces, and recommendations for those? Without any answers to my questions, I decided it would take a lot of trial and error to figure it out for myself. I've done 3 different breeds and many fleeces, so I will save you time and show you what works for me. Let's jump right into the control panel settings before we go through examples. So typically when I'm going to be carding a first pass, regardless of what type of fleece I'm doing, it could be a Babydoll fleece, it could be a Shetland fleece. When I'm doing a first pass, I like to have my speed about there. So these are going to be equal and just slightly towards the right. So this is where I would set that for a first pass. Now when I'm running it through the second time, you can go faster, but I don't increase it by much. That would be my second pass right there. And this would be hard to convey through the video, but there's actually a change in sound. So when I'm carding at this speed, and I turn it just ever so slightly to this speed, you'll actually hear a change in the sound of the carder. Next, I want to talk about dial settings for when I'm removing a bat or removing roving. If I'm removing a Shetland fleece, I like to have it at this speed. The reason is the Shetland fleeces are longer and they pull harder off of the drum. So if I'm pulling roving of a Shetland or a long staple length, I prefer to do slower at this rate. A Babydoll fleece or something with a short staple length, I usually start pulling the roving off at that speed, and I may even go up to that speed because the shorter staple length pulls off really easily, and so that roving can be pulled off quite fast. So those are the settings for removing a bat. And of course, if I'm removing a bat and doing roving, it will be in the unwind setting with the lid flipped up. The first example that I'm showing you is a Shetland fleece. This is from a wether named Genesis, and he is a gray catmaggot. What you see me doing here is making a cloud. I have a full video on how to card to reference that. Essentially, I'm teasing the fibers open and making them thin. While my Louette is a little more forgiving, the Ashford does require a thinner cloud. I'm going to pause for a second to allow you to hear what the machine sounds like in real life. It is loud, and the manufacturer recommends placing it on a square of fabric to reduce the noise. I, however, do not, and I have it placed on a hard tabletop. Now that the swift drum is full, this completes my first pass. I'm removing this as a bat. I recommend 2 passes with the Ashford e-carder. So usually I will do the first pass as a bat, and on the second passing I will take it off as roving, which is ready to spin. I've found that removing a thicker bat leaves behind less fiber, and removing a thinner bat tends to leave behind more stray fibers on the swift. This finished bat looks quite good, especially for a first passing. Now it's time to do the second passing. So I'm taking the bat and I'm tearing it in vertical strips. Then I am opening the fibers into a cloud again and passing it through a second time. I will continue tearing the strips vertically, opening them thin into a cloud and running it through. This needs to be done until the entire bat has run through again. Once you've completed the second passing, tap the red button on the side of the machine to turn it off. Then lift the safety cover. It is now time to remove roving. Now that I've completed 2 passes on the Ashford e-carter, it's time to show you how I remove roving off of the carter. Materials we need are the included doffer pin, which is right here. So the doffer pin, and we also need a diz. Now what's really cool about Ashford is that they actually include the diz within their paddle. So that's a really neat feature. Normally the diz would be a separate tool. So let's quick look at the settings we're going to use to do roving. So let's zoom into the control panel here. Make sure that of course the machine is on. The red light will blink. So when we're carding, we're doing it in forward. Now that we need to do it in unwind. So turn the dial down 1 to unwind. The speed is going to vary based on the staple length that you're removing. So from my experience, longer staple lengths, I like to do this speed or straight up and down at that speed. For shorter staple lengths, such as Babydoll, you can go a lot faster, for example, at that setting. But since I'm doing Shetland today, I'm going to go here. If it's going well and it's not pulling that hard, then I may put it to there. Okay, so those are my recommended speeds. To run it in reverse, you will either have to hold down this red button or hold down the foot pedal with your foot. Now obviously I want both of my hands freed up. That's the beauty of this machine, is that it rolls for you. So I'm going to choose to use the foot pedal so both of my hands are freed up. So next we need to remove or lift up the safety cover. So just lift that back up and set it down. I also want to mention that when it's in unwind, Ashford has it set to run at a reduced speed. And this is a good thing for doing roving. So here's an example. I'm holding the foot pedal down, and you can see that the drums are rotating backwards, the opposite direction of carding. Okay. Also take note here that there is an aluminum or a metal strip running across the swift drum. So this is where we're going to start with the doffer pin. So if I was going to remove a bat, I would rip the wool all along this metal strip and remove it as one giant bat. But for roving, this is different. What we'll need to do is estimate a small portion to just get it started. We will be threading it through. I'm using the large hole for the diz. So this is very much an estimate. Obviously the larger hole, you're going to want a larger piece to start. If you were going to do for a small hole, you would have to get a smaller part. So I'm going to estimate right about there, and I'm going to pull up until the fibers separate. So you can see on the metal strip here that there's a groove or an indentation, and that's where you run the doffer pin into. So I'm stopping with this width, and I'm not going all the way across. So the next step is I'm going to show you how to thread this through the diz. To thread through the diz, first make sure that the diz is in the proper position. So in this case, you'll notice that there's a flat side. The flat side needs to be facing the teeth of the carter, and there's a tapered side that should be facing you. I'll be using a yarn needle, which is used for knitting, to thread this through. So take your piece that you've estimated, and you're going to twist it to make it thin, kind of like a piece of string or yarn. Now that the end is thin, I can place it behind the selected hole, and using that knitting needle, oops, don't let it untwist like I did. And then using that knitting needle, you're going to push that through. Just need to get a hold of it like that. Set the knitting needle down, and now we're through. Next, what I like to do is turn my body to the right-hand side of the machine here, and I have my foot pedal where my left foot can conveniently reach it. Since I'm right-handed, I'm going to be grabbing, I like to have the bulk of the paddle on my right-hand side. So grasp the paddle, and we're going to use our left hand to pull up tautly here. Hold down on the foot pedal, and the drum will rotate. So what you can see I'm doing here is I am using my left hand to grasp the fiber, and I'm pulling it up gradually as the drum rotates. I'm putting quite a bit of pressure on my right wrist and hand, and I'm pushing down. I'm trying to keep the paddle close to the teeth. I often start and stop with the foot pedal, which is really, really convenient that you can do that. So if you need to stop to kind of readjust, just lift up on the foot pedal and it'll stop instantly. Another trick I've found is when you start, you're starting at the metal strip. So the very first rotation that you do until you get to the metal strip again tends to be a little bit off or a little wonky because that was just the estimated amount of fleece. Where once you get past that strip on the first run, then the subsequent passes are going to be more consistent because they're going through this hole on the diz. So it kind of gets easier the farther in you get. If you want to increase the speed, you can. So keep in mind that the longer staple lengths tend to pull harder and slower. Shorter staple lengths will pull very rapidly. Also, what I've learned from removing bats is when the bat is thicker, it tends to remove easier. If you make a thinner bat, it doesn't remove quite as readily. Also note here that you're never going to get 100% of the wool off. You can see that some of it is remaining over here. That's normal. There's a couple options that you can do with that. When I'm done with removing this, if there's quite a bit of fiber left, I may repeat this process and do a smaller piece of roving. I rarely do that. Usually there's just a small amount of fiber remaining, so I will remove it as I would remove a bat, and I will just simply reprocess it through on my next round. So this is a very comfortable speed, and this is real time here. So it really is going to vary depending on the type of fiber that you are removing and how thick or thin you made the bat. Obviously, if you're pulling it through the smaller hole in the diz, that's also going to pull harder. It's going to be easier to pull it through this larger diameter. I prefer to have a little bit larger roving, and if I want to spin into a smaller yarn, that's fine. I can just draft it down thinner. So as we near the end, and you can see I've been working left to right on the swift drum here. As we near the end, it tends to get a little thin. So I'll kind of show you when I stop. I really like having the long roving because then I have less joins when I'm spinning yarn. So if I want to have a consistent yarn, the less joins that I have, the better, in my opinion. So now you can see I'm starting to get thin. The diameter of the roving is getting pretty wispy here. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to go another round. I'm going to stop right now and pull that off. So a little bit is remaining on the swift drum, but that actually pulled off really nice. That's not bad. So let's just take a moment to look at the length of this roving. I'll grab it on the floor here. There's quite a bit here, right? So this is a really nice long piece of roving. You know, as opposed to a bat, this is going to be really nice for spinning. Also, when I spin, I may draft this out thinner, extending the length even more. So really minimizing the amount of joins that I have. Another tip I want to mention here, when you're removing the roving off the carder here, you notice that I was kind of holding it away. It's really easy for it to get tangled on the liquor in drum, because remember, the liquor in drum is also rotating in reverse as well. And so what can happen is you can easily tangle it right here on this liquor in and get caught and then wreck it. So I was kind of constantly lifting it up and away, and I just let it drape onto the floor and out of the way. So what I like to do with this roving is kind of roll it up into like I call it like a cinnamon bun or a cinnamon roll, just for storage. I don't braid them. So I'm going to take my right hand here. I'm going to just grab hold of the end. I'm going to start rotating it around my hand. And just keep building. In the end, it looks to me like a big cinnamon roll. So this is just my preferred method of storing them, to keep it kind of tidy. I don't want to just throw it in a bag all jumbled up. Okay, so when I get to the end, I'm just kind of pushing it through the center, like that. Okay, so here is one little circle of roving, or one little cinnamon bun here. So that's a nice, cute little way to store it. It looks pretty, and it's ready to take to the spinning wheel. Another tip that I want to mention is in between each bat that I make, I do clean the liquor in drum. So I find that this is what I've learned with the Ashford. Now, in comparison with my Louette drum carder over here, I don't have to clean that liquor in drum very often. But with the Ashford, I've learned that if I don't clean the liquor in, it does affect the poor outcome of the succeeding bats that I make. So unfortunately, this one is not as forgiving. So I'm going to clean it. I'm going to show you how I do that right now. So let's zoom in. So first of all, let's address that I just removed that roving, and there is a little bit left over on the swift drum. So I'm rotating it in reverse right now to get to that aluminum strip. Okay, so we're at the aluminum strip here. So as I mentioned, one option would be I could just take this off in roving again. It would be a much smaller and thinner roving, but that would be an option. But I don't want to do that, so I'm actually going to just take this off right now like a bat. So take your Doffra pin, tear all the way across that aluminum strip, and we're going to remove it. So I'm going to choose to just rerun this and incorporate it into the next round that I start. So every time I make a bat or roving, I do 2 passes. So this will just be incorporated into the next one. It's very nice looking. But it's on the thin side, so I just didn't want to use that by itself as roving. So the swift drum is ready for the next round, but we want to clean this off. So I will be using the included brush that Ashford includes with their unit here. And since I'm already in the unwind position, I'm just going to treat it as if I was removing a roving or bat. So I'm going to scrape against the bristles. Note that I'm going in this direction, from the front of the unit to the rear. Now I'm going to tap on the foot pedal, rotate it a little bit more. So I don't want these short fibers to get into the finished product. Remember, one of the points of the liquor in is to remove the short fibers so that they do not get incorporated into the finished product, which is going to have your longer fibers. It also tends to collect little neps, kind of like if you're a quilter at all, you get like pilling, fabric gets that pilling on it, so these little balls on here. You don't want that in your yarn, in your finished product. So unfortunately with the Ashford, I do have to remove this and clean it each round. With the Louette, I do not need to clean it as frequently. I will say that the Ashford here does unfortunately have more waste. Because I have to clean the liquor in drum more frequently than the Louette, there is more waste, and that is unfortunate. However, what I do with the waste, and you'll see I kind of have a pile of it here. So this waste from the liquor in, it's not suitable for spinning. But what I'll do is I'll save this for stuffing. So this can be used inside of pillows later on as a stuffing material. It's still clean, it's still very nice, springy, bouncy. It's just very short fiber. So I'm not going to waste them or throw them in the garbage. Now, I can talk about this in a different video, but I do have an additional tool that does not come with the Ashford. I bought this on Amazon. And this is a tool that can really get in here and clean these teeth even finer yet. Even more so than the provided brush from Ashford. But since I'm just continuing on with this fiber, I don't need to clean it that good. I would only clean it that thoroughly if I'm changing a different animal's fleece. So now that this liquor in is cleaned off, I'm ready to proceed with my next round. Now we are returning to the Shetland Weather Genesis to see his fleece removed as roving. It's the same process that I just showed you in detail, only now reviewing it at a faster speed. It's kind of nice to see the flow of it. In real life, it takes me about 5 minutes to remove a full Shetland Roving. I will show you 2 more fleece types so that you can see different fleece and staple lengths and how they perform on this machine. As I wrap up, here's a close-up. It looks good. The next fleece type is an Old English Babydoll Southdown. Now their fleeces are 2 inches and under, so this is an example of a very short staple length. We'll briefly watch as I run through the Babydoll fleece on a first pass. When the first pass is complete, either tap the red button or tap the foot pedal to stop the machine. Adjust your speed and select the dial to unwind. Remove the first bat. The shorter staple length removes quickly. Here's what the bat looks like for the first passing. Once again, tear your bat into vertical strips and run the whole fleece through a second passing. With the Ashford, the liquor in will accumulate a lot of waste with these shorter staple lengths. Now I am removing the second bat, or the second passing. It removes quickly, and this is what the results look like. Check out my other video reviewing the Ashford E-Carter in order to see what Babydoll Roving looks like done on the Ashford. This is how much waste I removed from the liquor in drum. The final example is from a Suffolk fleece. This is from an ewe named Bocephus. It has a mixture of black, brown, and silver in it. It's very pretty. We're skipping ahead to the end of the first passing. So here I am removing the bat, and you can see how nicely it turned out. The colors kind of blend where it's mostly black with touches of silver in it. I really like it. I've used her fleece before and in previous videos. Now we're skipping ahead to the second passing. So a Suffolk fleece is about 2 to 3 inches in staple length. So this is my example of a medium length. The Babydoll was 2 inches and under, so that was a great example of a short staple length. And the Shetland fleeces are typically 3 to 5 inches, so that's my example of a longer staple length. You'll notice while I'm carding that while I'm teasing the fibers open, I am also picking out any additional vegetable matter. The medium and long staple lengths perform well on the Ashford, where the shorter staple lengths do not. I talk about this more in my other video reviewing the Ashford E-Carder. Now we're skipping ahead to removing the roving after the second pass of the Suffolk fleece. In real life, it takes about 30 to 60 minutes to run one passing through the machine. It takes about 5 minutes to remove Shetland Roving, and it takes about 2 minutes to remove a bat. Don't forget there's time in between to clean up the liquor in drum. And here's the finished roving of that Suffolk fleece. It looks great. So check out these rovings that I made with the Ashford carder. So this is all from one sheep, and this is from Hank. So this is a Shetland wether named Hank. And what's cool about him is he's got a true black. I do have a few sheep that have the true black. A lot of times you get kind of that brown-black mixture, but this is a true black. So this was really, really fun to do his. I hadn't done his yet, and I was anxiously awaiting time to do his fleece. Finally got around to it. So this took me a few weeks actually to get this done, but look how many rovings I got off of his fleece. And he's definitely a big boy. Very beautiful, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out. The texture here is really nice. So this was all completed on the Ashford. The Ashford comes with an included brush, but I don't use it because I don't like it and I don't like the results that I get with it. I went through a lot of trial and error to figure out the settings that work for me. I want to show you an example of how bad it can be when you don't use the right settings. This is a lamb's fleece that I slightly ruined while learning how to card with this. As you can see, the roving did not turn out so well. This example is what I call the fish scale pattern. This is common with short staple lengths, and I prefer to use my Louette for these types of fleeces. If you are seeing a fish scale pattern with the medium and longer staple lengths, I would try slowing down your speed. Once I figured out the tips and tricks, now I am happy with the roving that I'm getting. This is a Babydoll and Suffolk cross, and some additional Shetland rovings, which turned out beautifully. Then we have a Suffolk next to a Shetland for comparison. I hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope that it saved you time and frustration while learning how to use the Ashford E-Carder. To learn more, check out my other video reviewing the Ashford E-Carder. I will have a link in the video description. If you are considering purchasing the Ashford E-Carder for yourself, I will also have a link in the description as to where you can purchase online. If you have learned any helpful tips, please leave a comment below so we can help each other out. If you like sheep, gardening, and homesteading, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.